The house stood quietly on the outskirts of town, its paint faded by years of exposure to the elements. We, the ghost, could feel it, the weight of centuries pressing down on the worn beams and creaking floorboards. No one could see us. No one could hear us. We were the invisible, watching presence that haunted the walls of this old Craftsman home, silent, forgotten. But today was different. A car pulled up the long gravel driveway, tires crunching against the dirt. The engine sputtered to a halt. The door swung open, and the sounds of human voices broke the silence. The clattering of luggage, the laughter of children, the low murmur of an adult conversation. A family. They had arrived. The door opened with a groan, and Rebecca stepped inside. She was beautiful, but her eyes were heavy with the burden of something long buried. She looked around at the interior, her eyes tracing the ornate woodwork, the narrow hallways, the tall windows. All elements of a home once cherished, now only a hollow shell. She glanced at her husband, Chris, who stood outside, distracted by his phone. "Let's get this over with," she muttered under her breath before calling out to the children. Their voices grew louder as they approached. Two teenagers, their laughter filled with both excitement and unease. Chloe, the older daughter, stepped in first, her eyes already scanning the room as if she was looking for something, or someone. She was the most sensitive of the family, her silence betraying her unease. Chloe's gaze flitted across the room, stopping for a moment at the mirror hanging on the wall. She stared into it with an expression that was too far from curiosity. Her younger brother, Nate, charged in behind her, excited and oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. He raced through the hallway, kicking up dust and scattering pieces of an old rug that had clearly been here for years. His laughter was the only thing that felt normal, but it didn't matter. We were already watching them. The first night, the family settled in. Boxes were unpacked, clothes hung in the closets. The soft hum of an unfamiliar place filled the space as they tried to make it their own. But they didn't realize that the house was already remembering. We, the ghost, drifted silently through the hallways. Our presence wasn't felt, but it was undeniable. The house had been empty for so long, but now there were voices again. A new family in this very house where we had once lived, where we had suffered. The kitchen was old, its cabinets stained with years of use, its refrigerator humming softly in the dark. We glided past it, past the table where Rebecca began to unpack the family's belongings. She was tense, her shoulders hunched, her gaze focused on something far beyond the kitchen. It was as if she was waiting for something, for someone. Was it for us? We didn't know. The family's silence was loud in its own way. As the night wore on, the tension between Rebecca and Chris grew palpable. They spoke in short, clipped sentences. Chris kept checking his phone, occasionally muttering about work, but never meeting her gaze. Rebecca was too tired to argue, too tired to care. Chloe, on the other hand, didn't speak much at all. Her attention was elsewhere, her gaze lingering on corners of the room where shadows seemed to stretch too far. Her eyes flickered to the stairs leading to the second floor. She had an unsettling feeling, one she couldn't shake. "I think we need to check the upstairs," she said quietly to herself, more a whisper than a command. Her brother Nate, oblivious to her discomfort, ran past her, excited to explore the new house. But Chloe's eyes stayed fixed on the stairs. She wasn't so sure. Something felt off. She could feel it. The presence in the house that no one else seemed to notice. The first night was always the hardest. The wind howled outside, its gusts making the windows rattle. But inside, the house was still, eerily still. The family fell into an uneasy sleep. We hovered at the foot of their beds, our presence an unseen weight in the room. The air grew colder. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. But it wasn't the ticking that caused Rebecca to stir. It was the faint whispers. She awoke suddenly, her breath catching in her throat as she listened intently. At first she thought it was the wind, perhaps a creak of the house settling. But then she heard it again, a whisper, soft, like a breath. It wasn't from Chris. It wasn't from Chloe. It wasn't from Nate. It was from the house. A whisper she couldn't quite make out, but it was there, trailing across her thoughts. She lay still, heart pounding, staring into the shadows of the room. Her eyes darted to the corners, where the darkness seemed to gather more densely than it should. She shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around her. But the whispers didn't stop. They came again, louder this time, as if the house itself was speaking. Chloe awoke too. She had never been one to sleep soundly, but tonight it was different. She didn't know what it was. A sense of dread that clung to her skin, a coldness that curled into her bones. The room around her was dark, but the shadows didn't feel normal. She slipped out of bed, tiptoeing across the wooden floors, drawn toward the source of the unsettling sound. The stairs. Something about them called her, compelled her. As she stood at the foot of the staircase, she could hear a faint, almost imperceptible hum coming from upstairs. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the house settling, it was something else, something old, something sad. Chloe stepped forward, her fingers brushing the banister, and she hesitated. The ghost was there, watching, waiting. The family continued to settle in. They didn't know it yet, but the house had begun to claim them, piece by piece. Its walls had seen so many stories unfold. Laughter, tears, arguments, silence. Now it was witnessing the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that would intertwine with its own tragic history. As the days passed, the house grew more restless, but it was a subtle kind of restlessness. The kind that makes you question the creak of the floorboards, the flicker of the lights, the odd feeling that you are never truly alone. And for the first time in a long while, the ghost felt alive. The ghost becomes more present. Chloe becomes obsessed with the idea that something is in the house. She isolates herself from her family, claiming the ghost is trying to communicate. Rebecca grows angry. Chris accuses Chloe of seeking attention. Fights erupt, and the ghost, overwhelmed by the family's emotional chaos, begins to act out. Lights flicker, drawers slam, doors creak open at night. But these are not random hauntings. They are emotional reactions. The ghost is no longer a passive observer. It is now feeling the tension and manifesting it through the house. Chloe starts blacking out, waking in strange places. Her notebooks are filled with writings she doesn't remember. The family fears mental illness, but we, the ghost, know better. There's a connection forming. The spirit is trying to merge with her. But is it possession or protection? One night, Chloe sleepwalks into the basement, a place no one in the family ever dared explore. There, under the floorboards, she finds something horrifying. A sealed box containing the belongings of the ghost's past life. Letters, a dried-up bouquet, a suicide note never delivered. Now the family knows. There was a death, a woman abandoned by her husband, forgotten by her daughter, who died in this house and never left. The family spirals. Rebecca confronts the ghost, begging it to leave her daughter alone. She screams into the darkness, tearing down curtains and breaking mirrors, demanding answers. And that's when the ghost, us, shows them. In a final, emotional montage, the spirit relives its memories. We see a mother waiting by the window, day after day until hope turned to despair. We see her final breath, and we feel her sorrow as she watches a new family fall apart the same way hers did. Chloe, tears streaming down her face, reaches out and forgives the ghost. "I know you're lonely," she says, "but I can't stay with you." The next morning, the house is quiet, peaceful. Chloe smiles for the first time in weeks. Rebecca and Chris hold hands, fragile but hopeful. And as the camera, our ghostly perspective, slowly drifts upward into the rafters, into the sky, the screen fades to black. The ghost is finally gone. The story flips the genre by making us feel sympathy for the spirit rather than fear. The ghost's tragedy mirrors the family's own disintegration, creating emotional resonance. A new perspective on horror. By watching through the ghost's eyes, we are forced to reflect on what it means to be forgotten, to linger, to observe helplessly.